right, so on Friday, the Sharks are set to begin their brand new 2022-23 campaign as they will take on the Nashville Predators in the NHL's Global Series over there in the Czech Republic. And so, as I do with every one of my teams beginning of their seasons, I am going to preview this season of the Sharks. This season is a new era for Sharks hockey. The Sharks sort of branded themselves as, this is a new era. Mike Greer is the GM. David Quinn is the coach. These are two new faces to this team that are definitely, they definitely have a lot of expertise with hockey. And Greer knows San Jose well as a former Sharks player, but still a lot of questions surrounding the team this year. New uniforms for the team. I mean, that, won't necessarily affect the play, but still, I mean, teams play better when they, feel good in their uniforms, I think. And so that was a big change. And so, yeah, I mean, the Sharks definitely will be a lot different this year. And I said that before, but I think a bigger move, an on-the-ice move, was getting rid of Brent Burns. And I think, he was the face of the Sharks. In the Stanley Cup era, even, when they made it to the 2016 Stanley Cup, he was one of the faces of the Sharks. And even, last year, he wasn't the player he was throughout his career. He still represented the Sharks as a whole. He represented San Jose. And so, yeah, the Sharks are going to be interesting this year. I think the goalies are going to be interesting to look out for. Obviously, Aiden Hill is gone. I think we're going to see a lot of time split between James Reimer and Kaapo Kähkönen, as well as Aaron Dell, on occasion. I don't think he'll play that much. We'll see what Sawchenko will do as well. But I think, this year, I think the young players hopefully will make an impact. I think seeing Thomas Bordeleau last season very briefly was some signs of greatness. We know how good he was in college. Of course, William Eckland, who was the 7th overall pick not too long ago, in last year's draft. Obviously, he only played 8 NHL games, but according to many sources, when he played overseas in Sweden, he got better as a player and got more physical, got, just physically a lot better of a player. And so I think that'll be interesting to see as well. I think we can expect a big year from Tomas Hertl, who obviously recently signed a big extension. Timo Meier, we're awaiting his contract news, but I think he's going to have a good season. And of course, Logan Couture. I think, we saw even in the preseason, he did pretty well too. So I think that should be interesting as well. I think, in the preseason, we saw a guy, who showed signs of greatness, Daniil Gushkin, and I think he played pretty good as well. He was a 2020 draft pick in, the 3rd round as well. So I think the young players, like you look at our players, a lot of them were recent draft picks. Of course, big question that from a veteran is Kevin Labanc. What's going on with him? I think that's an injury question that we, all Sharks fans kind of have. In terms of predicted record, I feel like in hockey it's really hard to predict a record, but last year I was very, very close in my record. The Sharks' actual record last year was 32 wins, 37 regulation losses, and 13 overtime losses. I'm going to say we have a little bit of a worse record. We lost Brent Burns. We don't know, how Carlson's going to do. I feel like there's a lot of questions. Is a bad record necessarily a bad thing? No, not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of good prospects in upcoming draft. I don't think we should outwardly tank to get, Connor Bedard, for example, but I think the Sharks should acknowledge that this is not a Stanley Cup year. Could we sneak in the playoffs? Sure. We're semi-close to doing that 2 years ago. Last year, not so much. But I think, for the Sharks, they have to acknowledge that this is not a Stanley Cup year. And, if they do have a bad record, they have a chance to get a good prospect. I don't think that should be necessarily the goal, but I think for the Sharks, looking at the roster, looking at what happened last year, looking at who they lost, I think that might happen. I think we can also expect a decent year from Jasper Weatherby, I'm hoping. There's a lot of guys in here that I hope to see return to greatness. Vlasic, we don't know about him. Obviously, sort of a down year for him last year. But, a lot of young guys that I think could make an impact. I think the preseason was pretty good. The Sharks actually beat a team from Germany today in Berlin. Not like it really matters. It was more for showcasing, but still, I mean, it's good to see. And I hope the defense gets better. That was a big problem for us. We have Mario Ferraro on the defense. I hope like I said earlier, I hope Erik Karlsson can step up. A lot of good potential there. Of course, Matt Benning being added to the roster. So not bad at all. I just hope we can, and then also Scott Harrington, of course. So there's a lot of guys being added and a lot of guys joining veterans. So yeah, like I said, I was actually pretty close to the record, in my prediction last year. My predicted record is 31 wins for the Sharks, 40 regulation losses and 11 overtime losses. Like I said, it sounds kind of ambiguous, a little bit arbitrary, but it's hard to predict hockey records. And I think looking at last year, I think it's going to be a little bit worse, but probably about the same. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the Shark season. I am very excited. Even if the Sharks aren't good, I still want to see how they do. I still want to go to games, and I'm still excited. So let me know your thoughts. I'll see you guys later, and yeah, go Sharks.